Okay, today's lecture is on safety. We're not necessarily going to get into, I don't believe we'll get into insurance, which you guys won't really care about anyways, okay? But we're going to talk about safety and the church. We're going to divide it into three sections. We're going to talk about protecting the children, protecting the church, and then some places that you may go maybe like our facilities, so then I just used the term campus. All right, so we have protecting the children, protecting the church, and then protecting the campus. So we're going to go through the three different sections, each one, and it's all dealing with different aspects of protection that you want to be thinking about, especially if you are going, if you're going into a church setting, which most of the guys here, you're going to step into probably an assistant area. This may be thrown into your lap. This is what I started working on probably 10 years ago, very, very heavily. 20 years ago, it was more the insurance side of it. So you're dealing with insurance, but about 10 years ago, you could see different things kind of developing, so you then have to be thinking about it. So the one is protecting the children. So let's look at that first. And I'm going to give you 7 things that you want to think about as far as being in charge of ministries. And this is more dealing with outreach, but if you have some questions as we come to the end on protecting the children, we'll try to take those questions, because something may come to mind. Because if you have an academy situation, we have an academy situation, then you're gonna have to escalate that as far as protecting the children. Some of that deals with protecting the campus, you might say, but all of those things in today's day and age you want to be thinking about. All right, so protecting the children. Number one, the workers need to have some type of background screening. Number one, some type of background screening. I did not do this, and so let me mark it down. Schoology folder. Is there a resource folder? Okay, there's a resource folder. So in your resource folder, in the Schoology thing, I will drop in there some of the forms that we use. We use a form that all of you had to fill out for our ministries. Our lawyer has looked those over a number of times, and then actually my wife is the one in charge. Once you fill that out, then there are a number of websites, and those are specific to your state. All right, so those forms you fill out, one is an application to work in children's ministries. The other one is an instruction for dealing with children. So everybody gets one of those. And then when that comes into the office, then my wife actually has 2 or 3 websites that she goes to, and then she looks up, believe it or not, there will be her initials next to your name in a file somewhere, and she will check your name against 2 or 3 Indiana websites that are, everybody that gets charged with a sexual child's crime has to be on a registry list. So there are, in your state, and you can talk to your sheriff's department, you can talk downstate, but in your state, everyone is a little bit different, but they're all free. But you have to kind of it's not just going to come to you, but it has to be registered. If someone is charged with a child crime, then they have to be, sometimes some of their punishment is they have to be registered. I have talked to our lawyer, and that is the nasty world that we live in. Is some of the things, you know how some people plea bargain? No? You know? All right. Wow. I mean, you even had Mountain Dew and chocolate, and you were really dead right there. But people can plea bargain. Now, some people, what they plea bargain about is that registration, which I don't like, and I talk to them about that. But that's law in today's day and age. So what a guy will do is he'll talk to his lawyer and say, do anything, but I don't want to be on that registry list. Because usually once you're on there for life. So they will plea bargain down to try to get off of that. And sometimes that happens. So everything we're talking about is not foolproof, but what you're trying to do is, as someone in charge of ministries, you're thinking of the nitty-gritty. And the nitty-gritty is, I'm going to do my due diligence to protect the kids that come in to church. So one of those is those forms. So what I will do is I'll make sure those forms are in your folder, the resource folder. If you want to download them or whatever, you can download them. So there's 2 different forms that we use. And then my wife takes those forms, and then she looks up on at least 2 different Indiana websites. And then she signs off with a date so that in our file is that we at some point checked your name, whoever is working in our children's ministry. Okay, so that's undergoing background checks. Now, the other thing that we are doing is, and again, this is not required. This is not required, and that's the great debate that sometimes you go into with law. Okay? It's great to have a lawyer that you can sit down with and talk with to help you, and I'll explain a scenario in just a minute after I explain background checks. It is not required that a church do background checks on everybody. It's not required. Okay? And the reason I throw that out there is because it is going to cost you some money, though. Now, we, through our insurance, it's pretty reasonable. Okay? It's $7 or $8. You know, a lot of them, they're $40 or $50. But because we use our insurance to bid it out, then we get a pretty reasonable discount. So what we do is any paid staff, all the paid staff here have had a background check. Now, then we're working on all of our bus captains, anybody that heads up a bus. Then from there, we're going to anybody that heads up our classes, like Sunday school teachers. Okay, we already do the instructions and all that, the application. All of that is done. We've checked their name, and now we're in the process of going through and doing a lot more background checks. All of us that are paid, every one of us, basically the authority, we have all had background checks. All right, and to me, we're the decision makers, and then we have set down policies. And some of that, remember the instructions that we go through? That is very important, because I am not, the reason I say, well, oh man, you've got to be doing background checks on all these people. Well, some of it is because the rules we set down. And what's the rules? That this person signed and said that they would follow. They will never be alone with a child, ever. It's not allowed. All right, they signed that. They signed it and put their word that they understood it and they are going to follow these guidelines. Well, then if they disobeyed that, they knew that's our policy, and you go against that policy, you're not going to be involved in any children's ministry. So in those things, we're already doing our due diligence. But by doing some background checks, and what I would say is, if you get into a situation at a church, and what you probably can do is talk to your insurance, and for sure, the people that are making the decisions, the decision makers, the paid staff, well, then background check them. All right, it may only be 4 or 5 people. Well, they're the ones that it starts up there, and ultimately, all right, for our insurance, I've done it's going to lessen any liability when I have signed these things. They've checked my name against a registry. For me, because I'm paid, they've also done a background check. And we're in charge of making decisions. So we're trying to do our due diligence of protecting children. So if I know this because of what we've done as far as protecting the children, I feel very confident standing in front of any court saying that we have done our dead level best to try to keep the children safe. Okay, does that make sense first with the background checks and the forms? That makes sense? Okay, so, and this is what we do. If we'll go down it. Let me go through the other things, and I think some of it will come together. Okay. All right. So number one, all your, starting with your nurseries all the way up through high school, if they're dealing with youth or children in your church, you have some forms that they fill out, and then you may start with paid staff, but paid staff, they're going to have background checks. Okay. Then have a check-in, check-out policy that you kind of develop. This is very, very necessary with nurseries. Okay? But then in your, Sunday school, you get into a lot of nutty things, especially when you're trying to do outreach and in split home situations. So you want to have some type of protocol set forth for checking in and checking out for nurseries and things like that. Like, for instance, even in, classes here, if it's a school situation, kids just aren't out roaming wherever. Now, once they, in a church situation, once they get a certain age, I understand, they're 8th or 9th grade, they're not little kids anymore. But younger kids, you're going to be very restrictive on the areas that they can walk into and walk out of. That will help you. Okay? In our situation, let me just keep going with the idea of restricting areas. I was just at a pastor's workshop at the end of August, and we got talking about this, and they were asking some things that we have dealt with and stuff we've researched, and so what is helpful. And not all churches, again, you step into a facility, sometimes your facility isn't made. You bought a facility or you bought a used facility. It's not always a perfect situation. You didn't get to make it. But if you have the ability to make some decisions about the property, children's ministry is best run in a separate building. All right, for us, our auditorium is up there, our main worship area, okay? All the children's ministries basically are down here. We have a couple of classes up in the gym. So I have a guy that sits outside, 2 men actually, one that's there and one that is roaming. Anybody that they don't recognize, they escort them in this building. And I've talked to them over and over. They are not allowed to just walk freely in this building. Once things begin, now I understand a parent coming in and they're dropping their kid off, but once Sunday school starts and somebody walks towards that door and they don't recognize them, they're walking with them. What do you need? And it's not, they're not grilling them. They're just being escorted. They may not know it, but that person, how can I help you? And what are they doing? They're required to protect the children here. And so having it in a separate facility sometimes helps you. Why? Because then we can lock the doors. Not just anybody can walk in to where the children are being ministered to. Okay? So you're restricting the flow. That helps you as far as a safety of the children. Does that make sense? All right, so on the first part, we're checking our workers. The second one, we're developing a check-in and check-out policy. and then we're trying to restrict the area that they are in. And it might be that we have to install some doors. And that's what you want to think about when you're in a facility. Hey, can we install some doors? Can we install and we're going to talk about this on our third point, and that is safety of the campus or protecting the campus. And some people say, oh man, well, video cameras and all this. And what I always tell people is just start with your entryways. They have to come through a door. And start with the thing that you're most scared of. Well, what is that? Children. Okay? Well, then stick a camera right as, if you have to put doors and stick a camera there, and then there's a sign. Like if you look at all of our doors, there's a little sign. This facility under video surveillance. What does that do? It just tells them, hey, you're on candid camera, bud. All right? You wanna act nutty, but we're gonna see what's going on. It helps. That is a deterrent. Right? That is a deterrent. So you're trying to limit these things. So in protecting the children, we're checking our workers, we're having a check-in, check-out policy. Then, number 3, we're trying to be above reproach in all of our leadership choices. Now, what do we mean by that? And any of our leadership choices of putting somebody in charge of all of children's ministries, or, hey, I want this person in charge of the youth. I want these parents to go to camp and be camp counselors. Okay, have some brains there. If the church sees that you do your due diligence there, and so, hey, we need some camp counselors. Yeah, anybody. And so here comes all the former ex-cons. And they're all lined up there, and all the parents are like, oh. All right? And, in our situation, maybe the one whole side is tattooed. There's piercings everywhere. And, the little kids over here are like, like, yeah, we're going to have fun, dudes. Yeah, unreal. I got some unique things planned. Like, no. All right. You want to be doing your due diligence, and so making leadership choices. Even then, and this is a problem for folks. Someone gets saved, and they seem like they want to grow and they want to be a part, and then all of a sudden they're in the nursery. Oh, no. Okay? Or they're all of a sudden thrown into a Sunday school class because I need somebody. You need to be careful of that. You need to be careful of doing that. Be above reproach in your leadership choices. Okay? All adults that are going to be working in ministries need to be vetted. Then, number 4, create a security protocol. And what do we mean by that? Make a security protocol, especially, and we had a big discussion over the last year, a security protocol for child molesters and child predators. In fact, the lawyer and I, we discussed this for 3 months, what to do. So he recently has reviewed everything again. So let me give you the scenario, okay? Because you'd say, well, wait a minute. Anybody that comes, do I get a check? I'm having special days. So I'm trying to get guests to come in. Could a child molester come into church? Yeah. Yeah, they can. How am I going to know? Everybody, I'm checking them at the license and registration, please. We're a church, and so it was interesting because I was talking with our lawyer. I asked him, and he's very protective and thinking about the church all the time. And then he stopped and he said, well, don't they need church? They do. Right? More than anybody, they need church. All right? So you have to think of that. I don't want to restrict everybody from coming to church. So that means, all right, you drank once, you can't come. All right, so we just have to, we need to be thinking about this as far as, okay, so what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Okay? The protocols, we're just trying to set some protocols down, and what are we trying to, we're trying to be careful. All right, and I'm not going to have a child molester walking around. Why? Because they can't be a Sunday school teacher. Why is that? Well, they're going to have to check in, and they're going to have to fill out the form. Then I'm going to, if anything is questionable, like for instance, if anything is questionable on that thing, this is what we've done. Anything that is a flag on their form, we automatically do a background check. Automatically, no question. And in fact, I tell everybody that. I told a guy, I believe that he stopped getting involved in ministries because I told him that. So what I've told all my guys, in fact, Dr. Vogelin, Pastor Armacost, anybody that comes now, I tell them, just so you know, we reserve the right to do a background check on you. So when you fill it out, we need your license and all that. Now, it's not saying that I'm gonna, but I tell them I reserve the right to do that, just so you know. So even in the last year, I've had a couple of people, they never came back to me to get involved in ministry. That's their call. Okay? And in fact, there was one that they no longer come to church anymore. That's fine. All right, why? Because my job is protecting the children that are here. And if they don't want to have if just saying, hey, we reserve the right to do a background check, and it stops them from wanting to do anything, even putting some of these protocols in place is going to stop somebody, especially a child molester. Okay, this is, and we'll talk about other things that maybe can help you, but a child molester, a child predator, most people, like even in your situation, most of us are not hanging out with them, okay? And most people are like, yeah, well, you can see them. No, if you read on it, no, you can't. Why? Because children normally trust a child molester. How do they do that? Because they look they can talk very well to a child. A child ends up trusting them. They have a very good presence about them. You are not going to know if they're a child molester or not. Okay? A child molester is looking for what the police call, and what in the criminal world, what they call is an open target. An open target is something, or a soft target. Okay? And what do they mean by that? It's something that does not take a lot of work. Right? They are a predator and they're a child molester because they don't have a lot of self-control. That means they don't have a lot of character. So they're not going to work at it. Okay? So what they're going to do is it's called a soft target or an open target. And by that, most churches have just this open door policy. So what we've done is tried to work at a balance of that so that our children's ministry, it's pretty locked down. We're very careful. But anybody can come to church. Oh yeah, come on in. All right, come on in. But we already have every other policy in place. And in fact, we do not have a written child molesters policy. Because everything that we are doing, our lawyer looked at, and it is exactly what the law is required. So let me explain why we didn't do any more. We were looking at doing a policy and having it typed out, all this about if a child molester comes in. Most of the time, and I've talked with the lawyer, and it's vague here, but it's supposed to be that if you are a place that children are at, a child molester is supposed to come to the people in authority and tell you that he's a registered child molester. Okay? It's vague on that, but it's supposed to be that they say that. The reason is that, in the government's eyes, the children should be protected, which doesn't make sense because you can kill one. All right, but we're not getting off there. But it's supposed to be that you're supposed to protect the children. So the idea is that when they come on the property and if there's children there, they've got to let you know. Well, we were saying, well, if they come and let us know, then we've got to have a typed out policy. This is what they're going to do and this and this and this. Well, everything we have in place with the how we have restrictions for being involved in children's ministry, we're doing our due diligence. So what our lawyer talked to us about is if the law is here and we type up all these restrictions and we say, yeah, well, the law is here, but all these restrictions basically were going to make us up here. In court, guess what we're charged against? We made a new law. Everybody else has this. But because I did this, now I'm required up here. So nothing is typed, we just verbally talk about things. Why? Well, I'm not going to get our church shut down because I did this and the law requires this. Does that make sense? Now, we can talk about it, but I just didn't want it in writing. That's why you have somebody that knows the law a little bit. Because your job also is to make sure that your church keeps running. All right, so then I made our church more liable, all right, more apt to get a lawsuit. I don't want that. And so that's why you talk with people and you take your time, you do your due diligence, right? But also you have somebody that you can talk with. You create security protocols, but make sure that you invite people in. This is one of the problems that we have as I call it independent fundamental Baptists. Right here, you guys think you know everything, and you don't. How can you know everything? It's not possible to know everything. Why? Because you're you, all right? Also, you're 19, all right? But also, even in I've been at this a long time. I can't read everything. I can't read every security manual. I can't keep up with all the laws. So you invite people in that know those things, and they can help you. And you create a security protocol that helps you even with, okay, what if a child molester comes on site? Now, what we do is if a child molester comes on site, this has happened a couple of times. In fact, I've gotten a phone call. Sometimes it's dealing with our routes. And so automatically, that bus captain or second man has to, basically, they call me or they call their captain if they're a second man, and that person is automatically removed to a shuttle car. They can come to church. They just will not be around any children. And they have somebody assigned to them every step, even to the restroom. All right, they're not going anywhere without somebody, handcuffed to their side. I mean, I had a funeral. And one of the relatives he had a monitor on. And the one staff member, it felt really, really great. But I was like, you're assigned. All right. And they sat right by the person, went with them. They couldn't be anywhere without that person next to them. Why? Well, because I'm going to protect their children. And they can come to church, you bet. You can come and you can hear the Word of God, and our desire is for you to change and get better. But I am not sacrificing any child because there are consequences. Okay? So you have to set kind of some protocol with that. So in protecting the children, we've gone through 4 things. The 5th thing, and we'll talk about this later, so you can develop a security team. Develop a security team. And we'll talk about that because we still got to keep moving. Develop a security team. We'll talk about that in another point. Okay, then number 6, build a buffer window of time. And I'll explain that to you. We do that. when somebody joins our church, they are not allowed to be in a ministry for 6 months. So explain why we did that. I already gave you, right, because you are in college and you believe you know everything, I already gave you the answer, so since you know everything, you can give it to me back. Go ahead. Come on, go on. Yes? Yes, but what else? What did I tell you about these people? Looking for a soft target. So what did I just tell them? Hey, in 6 months, you can be a pervert. Oh, no, because they want it now. Self-control is not one of their strengths. Okay, so I just said, hey, 6 months from now. So what are they going to do? If there's truly a pervert, they're going to join in. They're going to go look for another place. You say, well, you just made them go. No, then that church is responsible. But I'm responsible for this. That's what I'm responsible for. My job is to guard here, and that's my duty. My job is not to protect the United States of America. Okay, that's not. It's to protect this church, this property, and the academy and the college. So by making it, you got to be 6 months. Now, it's a little bit different. You'd say, well, what about college? College is different. Why? Because college kids are coming to be trained in what? Ministry, and we get reference forms. So obviously, some of that falls back on your church. Because if your church didn't do, if they weren't upfront with us saying, hey, just so you know, this person's a pedophile. Oh. And then all of a sudden we find out, oh yeah, you sent a pedophile to train in ministry for children's ministries. Okay, well, and we've never, in the 40 years of having the college, we've never had an incident. So some of that, the protocols in place to help protect, and then we accept, like if there's another church of like faith, we will accept membership, and then if they're a church of like faith, we lessen the time that they have to be involved. Does that make sense? Because if it's a church of like faith, they've done due diligence, we're going to call and reference that, then we can lessen that. But if it's just someone that gets saved out of our ministries, they're going to have to wait 6 months. And some of that is just what he was saying. All right, yeah, we got to do some background, and they need to grow. All right, I want them teaching Sunday school. They haven't even read their Bible. They don't even know what reading the Bible is. Oh yeah, let's teach Sunday school. No. All right, now, can they go soul winning? And yeah, they can go soul winning. And are there other things that they can do? There are some things that they can do. We're gonna be a little less lenient as far as, okay, can they join choir? Well, that really isn't affecting children. All right, so there are some ministries that they can be involved in that isn't going to really put your church at risk. But you set a buffer. Most people call it a buffer window of time. So you're putting a buffer window of time where they come in, they're assimilated into your church, and it also gives you time to fill out some form. And also, you may then require some training. They may have to do some training. Hey, you have to do X amount of weeks before you can, be involved in these ministries. All of that is going to help you. Okay? Then number 7, never stop being vigilant. Never stop being vigilant and knowing who's serving in your church and making the protection of your children a priority. It may not lead to just this monster amount of people joining your church. But what you will find is the people that are there will thank you for it. Because they know that you are trying to protect, especially, everybody appreciates protecting the children. In fact, we've had the police departments come in and help. The one police department, and this was years ago, There's one man there that is kind of in charge of public relations, and he'll come to churches. So he came in and did about an hour and a half lecture to the guys that are in security here. And that's one of the things he said. He's in charge of security at his church, and he said there's going to be people that once you start putting things in place, they're going to be like, oh, you know what about this and this? And he says, I'm sorry. He said, but in this case, use the children. Like, oh, it's for the children. He said, it's kind of hard to, like, what do you mean? Well, it's for the safety of the children. And really it is. A lot of things you're putting in place is for the safety of the kids. And it's kind of hard to be like, you know what, let anybody come in and kill them. Like, what kind of person are you? All right? So it's not that you're throwing the kids out front, but you are, that's some of your job. And in today's society, you need to be careful of that. Okay, so number one was protecting the children. Number two was protecting the church. Protecting the church. So what do we mean by that? There's two things that are involved in protecting the church. The one is, and again, I will throw it into the resource box, all right, in your resource folder. We will put a copy of our Constitution. Your Constitution, as of now, all right, can be held up in court. All right, as of now, all right, it still can be held up. So it is important what's in your Constitution. In fact, this Thursday, I had a meeting Monday with deacons and staff men. We were going over a bunch of things. And this Thursday, I'm following up with a couple of things. And one of the things is we're adding 2 words to our Constitution under our statement of faith. We believe in the sanctity of the home as instituted by God in the Garden of Eden. And then we put verses, Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2, consisting of marriage between one man and one woman. And then it lists Hebrews 13, united by love and Christian faith. What we are doing is we're adding 2 words to that. We already had updated this, instituted by God in the Garden of Eden, and then we put the verses there, and then consisting of marriage between one man and one woman. We had already redid that about 3 years ago. Well, now we're putting something else, and you'll understand when I put it in. Okay? We believe in the sanctity of the home as instituted by God in the Garden of Eden, consisting of marriage between one natural-born man and one natural-born woman. We're adding 1 or 2 words. So what did I just do? Eliminate it. All right, with 2 words. You always got to be thinking about it, because as of now, this can be held up in court. All right, and even as we were talking just recently, there was a bunch of pastors, we were talking about it, and they're like, but what about if they chuck that? I said, really, at some point, this right here, it may be out the door. And then all of us will just be in jail. That's fine. All right, but until then, what I'm going to do is right now, we vote on as a church, and as a church, we agree to this. So as a body of believers, this is what we believe. And that's why a constitution is important, and to develop that properly and to be thinking about it. Like we review ours like I'm reviewing it right now, and then in December or January, there's a couple other things. So we're always looking at it and saying, hey, what about this? What about this? Why? Because this is what binds us together. As a church, we agree to this. Now, anybody that joins our church gets a copy of that. All right, this right here. All right, now, they may not read it. They may look at it and we believe in the plenary verbal divine inspiration of the 66 canonical books of the Old and New Testament. I'm sure that a lot of the folks that have just joined, I'm not seeing them reading that much. But as they grow, they have a copy of that. And if they ever want a copy, why? Because they expect our leadership to be lining up what we believe and then putting it down in writing too, because that's what we believe. A constitution is important. So constitution. Secondly, Then you have the church itself, and that is what I mean the place of worship, physically. So what now, remember I said protecting the children? I'm protecting the church. We said the Constitution, that's the paper, but now I'm talking about, for us, it's that building up there. That's the church itself. So here are some suggestions then to help you for the church itself. And we're not going to get, I don't think, to the campus that much. We got about 7 minutes. We'll see how good we do. One, and I said we'd come back to it, develop a security team. Now, what do we mean by develop a security team? You need to have people that you meet with. All right, and about 10 years ago, I started working on that. 5 years ago, I was very heavily involved. Now, I don't really do it. I have actually a former Marine, and he heads up all my security. All right, and he sits out here. He meets with the guys. He reviews everything. Once a year, he has a meeting with all the men, reviews everything, and then, and some people may disagree with this, okay? But anybody, and I talk to the church every once in a while, and normally it's when the college is not in session, but anybody that wants to carry a gun in our church, I want them to talk to him. In fact, I just had somebody talk to me, and I said, talk to him, and he's not allowing them to wear a gun in our church. And you'd say, oh, I mean, we have a Second Amendment right. Not in this church. And I've talked to the police. I can tell you no. And I can kick you off the property if you have a gun and I don't want it on you. And you could say, I have not here. This is my house. All right? And it's not, but I'm in charge. All right? That's why a place of business can say, no, you'd say, well, why are you restricting it? You know why I'm restricting it? Because I've had the police in here. I have the police in about every other year. They take a look at our property. They go through our property, and we do that through the academy also. That's why we've made some changes. They come in and they help us. And one thing they told me, they said, you need to make sure you know the guns that are here. They said, what you should be worried about if you have a shooter is not the shooter, but everybody behind you that pulled their gun. Because you're going to get shot in the back. Right? Because, I mean, you look at that auditorium, there's so many, I mean, you talk about a crossfire, all right, there would be so many bullets everywhere. It'd be crazy, I mean, because it's just hard. And in fact, a year ago, I asked the guy that's in charge of ours, I said, hey, do you mind if you're having a meeting? I'll come in for 10 minutes. And I talked to the guys and I said, hey, I want you to understand, I know I have, at all times in our services, I have 12 guys that are packing. All right, so a guy's going to get his head taken off, okay? All right, but this is what I told them. All my guys, they log in, they do X amount of shooting every so often. All right, that's why I have a permit. I don't carry. You know why? Because who knows what I would hit? I don't shoot that much. I'd be like, hey, all right, they would shoot me. All right, all right, I'm a pastor. I can't get out there and shoot all the time. So that's why they're like, yeah, you got your permit? Yeah, and I got some nice guns. But guess what? I can't shoot all the time. I don't live the typical life. I live the life of a pastor, and that means I'm studying, I'm visiting, I'm doing the work of the ministry and the ministry of the word. That's what I do. It's not shooting all the time. And so that's why I don't care. And I want them to know, and this is what I told them. I met with them and I said, hey, just so you know, you pull that gun, our church may be done. I just want you to know, and you have to think that way. Because if somebody gets shot in our church, it may be that our church is over. So this is what I know, and this is what I have decided a long time ago. Somebody pulls a gun. I said, this is what I know. I will run at them and tackle them. Because I'd rather die than somebody pull a gun. And that's what I want every one of my guys to think. It's not, I'm gonna save everybody else. No, well, part of that, but I'm willing to lay my life down. Okay? And every one of our guys, that's what I want them to think, and they all think that way. So when we say security, that's what you have to be thinking about. It's not that, oh yeah, man, I just like guns. You know what? Just liking guns is not the guy to pick. Oh man, you should see, man, I self-load, and this thing is packing heat. All right, so the whole building's going to blow up. Okay? You have to be thinking about it. It's got to be, and so that's why the guy that heads up, he's a former Marine. He was in Vietnam. He has seen battle. I have never seen it. He was trained to handle a gun. He was trained to handle craziness. Okay? So I like having guys doing that. That's what I want. I want them to, because, you know, we can say whatever, but I have never been in war. I have never been in a firefight, and most of us, the bullets start flying, we're going to be screaming like little weenies, all right? Like, all right? We'll be running like crazy. Because, I mean, that's what it is. It's chaos. So develop a security team. Number 2, create a risk assessment. By that, have somebody come in. Have the police come in. We have a very good relationship with the police department, so we ask them to come in, and then they tour. What do you think? Walk through the hallways. What do you think about the buildings up here? All right. Then, actually, a lot of police departments, the one was Valparaiso. The guy gave us a sample. He gave us a, what do you call it? It is a emergency plan. He had a sample, and then we went through it and went through it. All right, so come up with an emergency plan if something bad happens. And have it. It's a protocol. And then those guys review it once a year. Now, some people, and I actually have the guys that I think would like it. They've talked about it. They've wanted to come in and practice. All right. Well, and that's where some of the guys really get into it. Okay, and that's just kind of tone them down. All right. We're not really ever wanting this to happen. And actually, the police guy that came in, and it was good. He told our men. He said, just so you know, here's a sample, and we worked on it. We gave it to him. He analyzed it for us, gave it back to us. He's like, oh, that looks pretty good. He said, but just so you know, if you have a shooter, this right here probably is out the door because everybody's going to be screaming. He said, it will be chaos. And that's good to know because some of us think, oh, yeah, we get it all planned. I mean, he's going to walk down here. All right, what is he going to call you up and get a plan from you and say, hey, can I come in and walk down this hallway, shoot these people here, these people? No, I mean, it's chaos. It's going to be chaos. So there isn't, but you have a plan, and this is what he said. And this was helpful. By developing a plan for the church, what you are doing is he said, this is what I found, and he's traveled all over America helping different churches and helping people out. He said the people that plan, normally, nothing happens. The people that don't plan, it almost always happens to them. In fact, there was a church in Valparaiso, and he was telling me, he said it was either 5 or 6 times that the police were called, and it was not a shooting incident, but he kept on telling them to get a camera, do this, do this. He said 5 or 6 times, almost the same time of the year, so it's probably the same person, broke into their office, stole all their laptops, all their computers, pulled their safe, and then guess what? The police are called, they came, they turned it into insurance, replaced them all. 1 year later, they didn't make any changes, they didn't lock the doors properly, all that, and so they came in, took all the laptops, all the computers, took the cash, and he said 5 or 6 times, hello guys, all right, why don't just leave it sitting outside at this time of the year, all right, wrap it up, count it as a donation. All right, but some of it is have people come in and do something to protect. All right, what we'll do is all right, because we didn't finish up everything, we'll try to finish up this tomorrow morning quickly, and then we're going to try to get into developing a soul-winning discipleship program. That's tomorrow's lecture, and I want to make sure to dwell on that. But I want to give some time even for some questions that may come up. I like doing it sometimes the next day because maybe something will come to mind as far as, okay, now I understand protecting the children. And then we were talking about protecting the church itself, and that's the security team, having a protocol, having some guidelines that are there. And then it's also talking to the church about it once in a while, letting them know. And some of that is talking to the dads. Every once in a while, I have a men's meeting, and I want to talk to the men about it. So if something bad happens, this is what I tell our church, and this is what the guys try to tell people. If you ever hear shot, you know what you're supposed to do? What's the best thing to do? Get down. I want everybody underneath as far down as possible. Jump up, no, that's not the thing to do. So as soon as you hear shot, it's boom, down. If everybody's down, then I have 12 guys. All right? And they're like, yeah, all right. And then they're up and they're shooting each other. Okay? Okay. And actually, then the security, my security guy, he has those placed in the auditorium. So he moves them around. So they're placed in the auditorium so that they're spread out through the auditorium too. So it's not all 12 are sitting next to each other. All right? He has them spread out. And that's his job. And the thing is, you meet with a guy, you put a guy in charge of that, then it's not. I've done some due diligence. There's normally a guy that really likes it, but you also, I talk to him every once in a while because I want to balance. I want to balance. I am not, just like I said, I do not want them just, pulling. No, I'll lose my life first. Why? Because we're thinking about the church more than anything. And I want the church to be in existence. All right? It's just, you might say, well, I mean, you didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, but it's just hard. Sometimes it's hard to overcome some of that. So you got to be thinking about that. All right, so we'll pick up tomorrow with some of those thoughts.